It's time!
What's kicking, everybody? We're back for another episode of Pickin Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by my friend Tom. Tom, how you doing, bro?
Doing great, living life. It's summertime. Sun's out longer, weather's nicer. It's pretty hot. Well, pretty hot, but also pretty humid where I am. So take the good with the bad. But yeah, been to the beach a lot, trying to tan. Life's been good. How about yourself?
Yeah, everything's okay. Summer's
Just all
great.
right.
Yeah, summer's great. I had to get a couple stitches the other day. Just picking up scars as we go through life, right?
Having too much fun.
Yeah, exactly. We've been on a bit of a hiatus. We've been busy the past couple of weeks, but we're back to talk about UFC Nashville. This is a prototypical fight night card, one of these like location fight nights with some of the same faces that you see on a lot of those cards over and over again. It's headlined by Derek Lewis versus a relative newcomer, typical of one of these location fight nights. Stephen Thompson, he's been all over the place on these fight nights. We haven't seen him on a pay-per-view in a while, but he's fought in like Orlando and some of these other fun locations. Nate Landwehr is another one of those guys you see pop up. So, it's one of those typical, like, we're going to a town we haven't been to in a while, or one that we don't go to as often as the others. Let's put on a fun show. And I think this is actually going to be like a decent card for the fans that show up. I think they're playing in the Nashville Predators Arena. I hear it's pretty nice. So, yeah, looking forward to it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I can't remember the last time they've been in Nashville, but I want to feel like this can't be like the first time. And if it is, I mean, shit, I haven't seen any promotion, as is the case with the UFC these days, barely any promotion. Last week was UFC International Fight Week. Didn't hear a thing about it. Even of the week, I didn't see any promotion. I didn't see much, and I follow all the UFC socials. So like the fact that I still didn't see it when I'm looking for it is pretty confusing. I just want to go back and I want to look. So when I Googled UFC Nashville. I got Sanhagen versus Font August 5th, Saturday. So, okay. So I guess it maybe isn't the first time we're to Nashville, but I feel like we're not there that often. So, it'll be interesting. Nashville's a cool city. But where's Derek Lewis from? He's from Houston. So he's had his opportunities to try to show off in Houston. They didn't really go so well. Fighting a UFC newcomer, one previous UFC fight, and then a contender series fight. Really interesting. It'd be really sad to see Derek Lewis go out there, either get knocked out or finished, or even honestly beaten by a relative newcomer like that with very little experience. It would kind of tell us where Derek Lewis is at in his career. So hopefully we're not there. 40 years old, heavyweight. Could still be a knockout artist. It was never about like amazing speed, but we'll see what happens from this picture. I don't know when it's from, but Derek Lewis doesn't look to be in the best shape of his life. So, you remember there was that time where he was like coming back off of one of the losses where he got that picture of him running and he looked like he had like giant boulder shoulders. And, he had looked relatively more athletic at different points in his career. At this point, I think he's just embracing the full DC end of his career. And if I go out getting knocked out, I go out getting knocked out. Who cares? So a little bit sad to see. Hopefully that's not what we experience. Hopefully he goes out there and has a good time. But what do you say we go ahead and kick it off with our prelim notables? What do you say?
Excellent.
All right. You want to kick us off?
No, you got it. What do you got?
All right. Well, first, I'm going to go with Kennedy Nezachikwu to get the win over Walter Walker. You got him 70% here on Tapology. That was actually the first time I took a peek at that. I would imagine Kennedy Chikwu was going to be a solid favorite here. He does have 2 losses over his last 5, but were to guys like Dustin Jacoby and OSP, which that OSP loss is a bad loss, admittedly, but ever since then, Kennedy, we've seen a little bit more of an aggressive version of him, and he's looked a lot better getting the knockouts of Chris Barnett and Lucas Bresky. We're very solid knockouts, especially the Lucas Bresky. I think he really did a good job of dominating that fight. 33 years old, maybe on the tail end of his prime, maybe in a little bit in it still a little. I think he's a far better striker here. Walter Walker is a guy who is a strong grappler. He's 13-1, but going back, you look at that resume, is a little bit padded. only in the UFC recently. He lost a unanimous decision to Lucas Brzeski in his first fight in the UFC. Has since picked up a win by a heel hook over Junior Tafa and a submission also by heel hook by Dontel Mays. Kennedy Nzechukwu does have long legs, but he is well versed enough on the ground. We have seen him be able to avoid getting taken down and be able to land his striking game, especially utilize those long legs. So I'm going Kennedy Nzechukwu here. I think it's I feel very good about it. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I have to lean towards Kennedy, especially with like just how good he is at maintaining distance with that teep kick, and it really prevents a lot of guys from going for takedowns because then you have a foot coming right up the middle at you, and you don't really want to eat one of those right off the nose. So yeah, I like the strategy from him as long as he sticks to that, keeps his distance game the way he has been lately. If Walter Volker does get a takedown, it could be interesting, but like Kennedy Nzechukwu is really good at like using his hips and posturing up for a really tall, long guy like that, popping his hips up, trying to like squirm out of bad positions or at least keep out of bad positions if he is vulnerable on the ground. He'll probably like I could see him dropping around against Walter Volker potentially, like to control time on the ground or something. And then probably winning the other two using his striking. He's not like a crazy finisher or anything. Neither of these guys really are, like these like show-stopping finishers or anything. But I like Kennedy. I just think Walter is a little bit more dangerous than people are giving him credit for in this fight. But I like Kennedy Nzechukwu a lot. What do we got next? Which other ones are we talking about again?
We got. I hit stop sharing. Here we go. We're doing Chris Curtis taking on Max Payne Griffin. And I'll let you, I kicked it off last time. You go this time.
Yeah, I mean, I like Chris Curtis here. We just saw Max Griffin lose to Michael Chiesa. Not a good loss because Michael Chiesa is really, really old. And Chris Curtis is not super young by any means, but he's definitely still a good fighter. He's the type of guy that he can do it all. He hardly ever goes for takedowns, though. And I think in just like a typical striking war, back and forth, he probably wins the majority of the exchanges. That's what I think this is going to end up being, is just like a nice 15-minute spar. Both men standing in front of each other, shot for shot. And at the end of it, Chris Curtis is a little bit better at picking his shots, changing things up a little bit more often, using his kicks, going to the body a little bit more, and then making his opponents drop their hands, at which point he causes a little bit of damage on the face. And that's how he ends up winning a lot of fights, is by decision when he does win. And I think he'll get it done against Max Griffin. And the thing about Chris Curtis being so good at picking his shots is he does have the potential to finish a guy like Max Griffin, who isn't like, great or anything. He's a solid fighter. Don't get me wrong, but it's I think this is Chris Curtis's one, but it is close. What do you think?
Yeah, I think everything you said, I think Chris Curtis, it's going to turn into a dogfight, and I'm going to take Chris Curtis in a dogfight, especially against Max Griffin. Max Griffin doesn't have much finishing power. Not that Chris Curtis has done a ton of that lately, but I still think Chris Curtis in a one-to-one power battle. I'm picking 37-year-old, a little bit faster, a little bit more durable. I think everything about this spells Chris Curtis for me.
Yeah, he takes a shot really well, gives one right back, and I think that's going to spell the name of the game for him in this fight. It's just who's going to have the better chin. They're just going to scrap for 15 minutes, I think. What else we got?
I don't have a pick for this fight, but Jake Matthews and Chidi Njokuani is a fight to watch. I think that one's going to be fireworks. I like Chidi's style lately. Aggressive, precise striker, fast, interesting, long limbs. Jake Matthews, Celtic kid, goes out there, is going to take a punch to give a punch. Power in both of their hands. Usually a really, really fun fight whenever either of these guys are involved. And the fact that they're together here, I think it's going to be a great fight. I would maybe – Jake Matthews is younger and been showing us a lot of good stuff lately. Chidi Njokuani is heavily favored on Tapology. I don't want this to go against me, so I'm just here for the violence on this one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. I'm definitely leaning more towards Jake Matthews, and that's just because he's shown such a jump in his defense over his last couple fights. He's really been using like that Philly shell technique that we see from Sean Strickland type guys a lot more often, and that's let him roll his shoulders out of the way of a lot of heavy shots coming up towards his face. And he's a guy who's been in the UFC for a long time. improves with every single fight. He's not one of these guys that's like been there forever and is like a journeyman. You know, he is 3-2 over his last 5, but you know, you look at his last losses against Michael Morales, who is shooting up the rankings right now and just stopped Gilbert Burns. So, you know, he's a really solid fighter. I like the trajectory, and I think that Chidi is a big test for Jake Matthews, but you know, it's a real test of like an up and coming guy versus a guy who, like, I don't see Chidi's career having the same trajectory that Jake Matthews, a guy who's fought at all different weight classes and performs well at them, and has been in the UFC since he's like fucking 18, 19 years old, like 28 or something. So, you know, that's a pretty long career. And we do see a lot of these guys that stay in the UFC for a very long time, even if they're not championship belt holders. They are guys that like rack up records, take big names, like basically just add really good pelts to their resume. And I could see that being a fight for Jake Matthews here. You know, like long tenured guy. Chidi is just another scout for him. So give me Jake Matthews.
All right. Do you have any more prelim notables?
No, I'm good.
All right. Let's move. Nate Landwehr, Morgan Chayer. I know you're good at saying his last name. Give me a taste of that. How do you say this guy's last name?
Chayer.
Chayer.
I think so.
I mean, for all we know, I'm going with Morgan Chayer, the last pirate, and I'm gonna see if Chance is gonna let me explain or not. I'm going with Morgan Chayer to get this one done. I think if you were to have to fight 10 times, Morgan Chayer wins 6 to 7 of those fights. Nate Landwehr is going to take 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 of them, just because he's a sheer dog. Speaking of dog, but the way Nate's got an aggressive style, throws a lot of crazy combinations, and just plots forward. Will obviously give one to trade one. Whereas Morgan Chayer is a kickboxer at trade, is going to be a little bit more precise, but he is going to throw bombs. He is good at distance management. I don't know which one of these guys is going to have a better performance, but I just think if you're going to have this fight 10 times, 6 to 7, there's going to go to Morgan Chayer because he's a better striker. And I believe this is going to be a striking battle. He's a cleaner striker. He's still got power. He's a much younger, 8 years younger, on a ascension, even though he's coming off a loss here. I'll go with the Frenchman over the American, which kind of pains me to do, but Nate the Train's going to make it a fun fight no matter what happens.
I totally agree with you there. I just think that it's a perfect fight for the last pirate because Nate Landwehr is a guy who is going to stand in front of you and brawl. I'll never forget, I was staying with my parents for the weekend, and I was in the spare bedroom at their new place and watching Nate Landwehr on no volume fight David Onama like almost 3 years ago, losing my fucking mind. So like I always get a little bit skewed and a little bit biased when I think of Nate Landwehr, but again, that is 3 years ago. Now we're talking about a 34-year-old Nate Landwehr in his athletic prime, coming back from horrible beatdowns. So then, you know, yeah, dog in him, come back from the worst scenarios and beat guys. And he still has the ability to do that. But now we're seeing him go up against these young, hungry animals. His last fight was Doo Ho Choi. Doo Ho Choi beat him by putting him into a crucifix and then elbowing him to hell. And I think that it's a problem for Nate Landwehr. You know, we see this with a lot of these fan favorite guys too, right? Like you get the big money fights. They probably pay, you know, the UFC probably has some deal where it's like, yeah, you know, you're going to take on this fucking young, hungry killer. You're going to put on a show. Here's a little bit extra money. Or they just don't. And they know, like, you know, Nate Landwehr's a dog and will fight anybody, regardless of the situation. If he is a guy that just will fight anybody, then they know that they can keep throwing these young, hungry killers in there. And his fight style allows him to get murdered now at this point in his career. And I think that we're going to see that from Morgan Chayer this weekend. I think he's going to put Nate Landwehr's lights out at some point. It's going to be like a repeated thing. Like it's going to be like a Looney Tune where he keeps getting back up and going at Morgan. And then Morgan's going to be like, whoa, and hit him again. And he's going to get up and come at him again and hit him again. And then finally he's going to go down. But Nate Landwehr is straight up a cartoon, and Morgan Chayer is a sniper, and he's just going to pick him apart while Nate Landwehr does like cartoon shit and eventually put his lights out. So yeah, give me Morgan Chayer, the last pirate. I believe that's a One Piece reference. So I'm not really too an anime though. What do we got next? Oh, you're on mute.
Tuco Turcos, against Junior Tapa, the juggernaut. 10-5 is Tuco Turcos, and he is coming in on a 2-fight loss streak. He got the submission by Omar Sy. When did that happen? And then Navajo Sterling lost to him by decision about 6 months ago. Wins, none inside of the UFC, all outside of the UFC, 3-2, 1-7, 19-10. A little bit of a padded record here. He only got this win via an arm injury. I don't have the information as to what exactly that was. At 35 years old, taking on Junior Tafa. Junior Tafa hasn't had a great showing. Muhammad Usman, not a great loss, not a terrible loss. Marquise Rogerio de Lima, Walter Walker, not great showings here. He's got a win over Parker Porter and a win over Sean Sharif. I think Junior Tapa probably has enough to get this one done. Looking at the performances of Tuco Tokos over his first few UFC fights here, he got submitted, lost the decision, arm injury, strikes, decision. So he's a guy who's a little bit more of like a brawler, probably unfinished. Junior Tapa, you could probably say the same thing about him, to be honest with you, but he does have power. He does have UFC experience. He is 28 years old. I think he's overall just better equipped to win this fight. I'm going with Junior Tafa, and so is 76% of Tapology as well. So, yeah, give me Tafa. There's not very many fighters in the UFC that I would feel good taking Tafa over, but Tuco Tacos is going to be one of them.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tafa as well, but Tuco Tacos is a weird one because Navajo Sterling is, well, he's like new and he's a prospect and everything. He just looks so good. And Tuco Tacos gave him a hard fight, actually. Not a hard fight, but his hardest fight in the UFC to date. And I think Navajo Sterling kills Junior Tafa. So this is like a weird MMA math scenario. I think Junior Tafa is going to end up doing it just because, you can't take a guy that has no wins in the UFC over a Tafa brother. Usually that goes in the Tafa brother's favor. So, yeah, just give me Junior Tafa, but I wouldn't expect this to be a walk in the park. Tuco Tacos is a plus 140 underdog. So, the odds aren't that crazy. This is one that I would not be surprised if Junior Tafa just fucked him off, basically.
Well, and something also to notice is this is a fight at 205, and Junior Tafa most recently weighed in at 241. He was a kind of smaller heavyweight, so it'll be interesting to see Junior Tafa at light heavyweight.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight to lose. And that's fat. That's not water weight.
Yeah, so be interesting to see what Junior Tafa looks like. Actually, maybe we can Google that right now.
Yeah, that's the thing about doing this today and not Friday. We did a Friday one a few weeks ago, but we got to see them after the weigh-ins and everything, and that's definitely one I would have liked to have seen Junior Tafa because he might look great or he might look absolutely horrible when it comes time to cut weight. Tuco Tacos is a true light heavyweight, I believe.
Not much.
No, yeah, he doesn't look bad. He's never really looked. It's his brother that's always been
here.
Yeah,
he looks good here.
Yeah, it's his brother that's always been the heavier, more plotting heavyweight type guy. So.
Well, all right. You go with Tafa here?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Tafa, but just don't be surprised if he fucks it up.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
here's
a tough one. Kattar, Garcia, go. What do you think?
I gotta go Garcia, bro. I love Calvin Kattar, but unfortunately, I think that he's too old, too slow to compete with young, hungry dogs like Garcia. Garcia's he's a fucking animal. I think he's gonna pick apart Calvin Kattar at this point. Body shots, head shots, and it's just gonna be one of the best boxers in the UFC, far beyond his prime, far beyond fighting. How old is how old is Steve Garcia? That says 33, and Calvin Kattar's 37? Am I correct on that? You're unmuted. I can't really see on your screen. I'm gonna have to go.
Yes, you're correct on that. He's 37 years old, 3 months, whereas Steve Garcia is 33 years and 1 month.
Yeah, Calvin Kattar's just had such a bad stretch of losses, though, right? I remember there being a Giga Chikadze up there, Yusuf Zalai, Aljamain Sterling, Arnold Allen, Josh Emmett. He actually beat Giga Chikadze. That was the one. That's so funny. But he's I think Steve Garcia is going to go out there and just pick him apart, body, head, and eventually just land a kill shot. The voting is not. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's 81% on Garcia, majority by knockout. I highly agree, and it sucks because I really like Calvin Kattar. He's a classic fighter. You know, he's like one of the holdouts from like the old era. He's been at it for a very long time. It's gonna suck to see him get murdered, but it is what it is.
Dude, and Steve's from Albuquerque, so he's been having to fight off John Jones for who knows how long. So, I mean, you don't want to underestimate the dog in Steve Garcia to be able to fight back against John Jones coming on to you, or training, I guess you call it. But no matter what, yeah, I think Steve Garcia is just kind of built for this. And where Calvin Kattar, like you said, is a little bit past his prime, does have a style where he gets hit. Yeah, Steve Garcia is used to fucking fighting off way bigger guys than Calvin Kattar. So I think I'm going to go with Steve Garcia on this one.
No.
Moving up the card, we are at our, not our co-main, our, what's the co-main? Of course, it's going to be Victor Petrino and Austin Lane. Interesting fight. 37 years old, Austin Lane taking on 27-year-old Victor Petrino. You're looking at their last 5, 2 losses coming in for Victor Petrino. Knocked out by Dustin Jacoby 6 months ago. Year ago, Anthony Smith submitted by. Not great. Not great. Wins over Tyson Pedro, Modestas Bukauskas knocked out, and Martin Pracio submission. So trending a little bit down for Victor Petrino. That step up in competition obviously didn't do him super well. Looking at Austin Lane, he's got a knockout loss 3 months ago to Mario Pinto, win over Robelis to Spain, and then 2 losses before that. I think he had like an extended period where he was off, maybe. Unintentional eye poke to Justin Tafa, then got knocked out by Justin Tafa, then got knocked out by Jonathan Dins. Managed to win against Robelis to Spain and put out any hype that guy had created, and then goes back to losing Mario Pinto. I think in this fight, I think Victor Petrino is good enough to beat an Austin Lane style or level of fighter. Also, I just noticed that Austin Lane, 249 pounds of his most recent weight. Victor Petrino, 205. And we are fighting here a what's the weight for this? We're looking at a heavyweight bout. So you got Victor Petrino going up in weight here. I don't know how hard that cut was to make 205. He is a fairly built guy. Yeah, he's younger. He's off 2 losses. Maybe he can attribute some of those losses to being a little bit lighter. Have him move up to heavyweight, gain some bulk. But Austin Lane, he's not a very bulky heavyweight, but he is 6'6" with a large reach. Actually, only 2.5-inch difference. So yeah, you know what? Give me Petrino to get this one done at the new weight class. I think he's probably a better fighter, beats his caliber of fighter, and I don't think moving up a weight class is going to negatively impact him too much. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I think like the Anthony Smith loss is somewhat negligible. I just hope that it hasn't started off a trend of him losing, like sort of like, fights that he should win, I guess. Making bad mistakes. I don't know if you remember that one. That was when he had Anthony Smith locked up in like a double leg up against the cage, and then Anthony Smith secured the guillotine, and Vitor Petrino still went through with the takedown and slammed Anthony Smith, slammed himself further into the guillotine, got choked out. That one was just like, hey, GG, Anthony Smith, you still got like the mental, he still had the IQ at that point to know to wrap up the gilly. But that was a tough one. Now you just hope it doesn't start a trend, because sometimes fighters get in their heads, and I don't think Austin Lane is like a huge challenge for Vitor Petrino. Super hyped up guy, came into the UFC, had a nice string of wins, and then Anthony Smith. Austin Lane fights like he's old. He is a big guy, right? He said he's 6'6". Big guy, beat Robelis to Spain, who was like 6'7". But I think Vitor Petrino is going to look good with the extra weight on him. I think Austin Lane is comfortable at heavyweight, but the thing is, if you think that Vitor is cooked and is like exposed as a fraud and may leave, if you think he's exposed and that's it, he's done for, Austin Lane is a plus 420 dog. But I think Vitor Petrino is going to have a nice comeback fight against a significantly older Austin Lane. Austin Lane, though, he is not a bad guy. He always gives like a speech when he wins about wanting to like inspire his son and inspire people and stuff. So, you know, if he beats Petrino, just prepare yourself for that. But this one, the actual co-main event. Next up, we got Stephen Thompson versus Gabriel Bonfim. Did you have a transition planned out? Did I ruin it? Did you have like something?
No. I'm just sad that Stephen Thompson is fighting a submission artist.
Well,
what are we doing?
Yeah, if that gives you any indication as to how we feel about this fight, this is not one we're very excited for. Gabriel Bonfim, as Ismail is, as well as brother. These guys are like in-your-face killers. Gabriel Bonfim doing much better than his brother, I believe. But yeah, just in your face, gonna hunt you down, gonna strike, gonna throw crazy shit, flying knees, overhands, try and back you down against the cage, and then whether you hit the ground on your own accord or he picks you up and slams you to the ground, then he's going to try and lock something up. Mostly like an arm triangle or rear naked choke. He really likes to go for the chokes. Unfortunately, I think that is what's going to happen. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson can play defense all night, but at some point, you know, the youth and the quickness of Gabriel Bonfim is going to catch up to him. See, like Wonderboy, it's going to have to be a kill shot type of night for him. He's going to have to use like a kick and snipe, something off of Gabriel Bonfim's head to win this fight. Otherwise, I think that, you know, Bonfim can knock him out. He could submit him, or he could just wrestle fuck him to a decision. And so Wonderboy's going to have to go in there and go for the kill. And I just don't think that he has it in him at this point in his career to play defense long enough, stay on the back foot, kick as well as he does without getting one of those kicks grabbed out of the air by a guy who will do that to you, who will snatch your foot out of the air when you go to kick at him and then dump you on your ass. You know, he's got a lot that he has to worry about. And I just don't think that even if he was young, Wonderboy in his prime could probably still compete today, just not as well as he did. You know, I don't think that we see like his game, his style have like the same title aspirations that he did against, you know.
I don't know. I think if he had speed that can contend, it's such a style where he throws so much at you. It's hard to he's so dynamic with his legs if he can maintain that speed. And I think that's ultimately where he's falling off. I don't mean to take this from you, but this is kind of where I'm going. Is like, I think Stephen Thompson at 42 years old, like, can't maintain the level of speed needed for his style to be successful.
Right.
So if he's going to throw these wild kicks or try to catch you by surprise, if it's not fast, you're still going to be able to recognize it and get out of the way. It's not going to be something that these guys have never seen before and don't even recognize it coming. So, like, he's got to be fast in order for his style to work. And I think he's lost that speed. So now he's more vulnerable. And you look back, he's obviously 1-4 over his last 5. All of the 4 losses, all grapplers. Gabriel Bonfim, grappler. Like, it's going to be Bonfim. It's just sad that this is how Thompson goes out. 15-year age difference.
That's crazy.
What are we doing?
Gabriel,
why are we doing this?
He was watching Stephen Thompson. If he was a UFC fan as a kid, he was watching Stephen Thompson because Stephen Thompson's been in the UFC for a long time. But yeah, I mean, it's just like that fighting style is already so hard to maintain in today's game when everybody could do everything to be like a more one-dimensional karate guy. But yeah, that's what I was getting at, is like he's just not fast enough to be able to utilize that style anymore. And he can't defend takedowns like the rest of them. You know, you look back at the Bilal Muhammad fight, which was even a couple of years ago now, when he was faster and more in his prime, I guess you could say. And, you know, he got taken down nonstop in that fight. And, you know, Bilal didn't even want to make it fun. That's when everybody hated Bilal. I guess people like him now after the JDM fight. But, yeah, it's Gabriel Bonfim all day. What's the main event again? What do we got? Oh, yeah. Derek Lewis versus Taliesin Teixeira. Another deflating event in a row. Power's the last thing to go. Derek Lewis could catch anybody. He looked so unmotivated. I hope he's motivated. He looked so unmotivated for a while, and then he had that flying knee win over, like, I think it was like either Rodrigo Nascimento or Waldo Cortez Acosta, one of those two guys. I forget who the flying knee was, and then he dropped the hammer fist down on him a couple fights ago. And
Marcos Rogério de Lima.
Yeah. Marcos, wow, yeah. All those 3 name heavyweights. So Marcus Rogério de Lima, yeah, and then Rodrigo Nascimento. Yeah, he did have a win over him as well most recently. Young guys, tough guys, beating really good competition. I think Derek Lewis could still go out there and get it done. He looked unmotivated before the Costa fight, so if that motivated Derek Lewis comes back, he wants to take his balls off. I think his motivation these past couple of fights is like, well, my wife said I need my win bonus or something like that. I guess if that's what it takes, just give me Derek Lewis. I hope he wins. What do you? I'm going to check the odds out real quick as well. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'm looking back at these wins and losses, and you could definitely tell he went through a pretty bad stretch here against Cyril Gahn, which you're not necessarily super upset with that. Chris Dawkins got back on the horse, and then the Tai Tuivasa, that was not the same Tai Tuivasa right now. Tai Tuivasa in 2022 was a phenom of his own right, so it's almost excusable. Sergei Pavlovich, I didn't really pick Derek Lewis to win that anyway. I think Sergey doesn't get enough credit. Sergey Spivak, I thought he was going to win that one, and I think he's just on this slide. And then, got his groove back with Rogerio de Lima. Jailton Almeida, I never thought he was going to win that fight. It's 2023, 2025 now, so he's probably 36, 37 on the tail end of his career. Never really could grapple, just push guys off of him. Jailton Almeida, I just thought was always too skilled. I always kind of thought Derek Lewis was going to be able to, even when he was fighting for a title, I was like, this feels misplaced. Derek Lewis feels like the kind of guy who's kind of fun, has severe limitations in his game as to why he's never going to actually have a championship, but he's always going to hover around the top 10 somewhere ranked because he still has that devastating power, and he's fast, and he's managed to maintain that power and speed late into his career, shown by, it was a year ago, so we don't know how far he maybe could have fallen in that year, but, let's look at Taliesin Teixeira, and Taliesin Teixeira is obviously a UFC newcomer, 8-0 on his career. UFC fight, Justin Tafa knocked him out 3 months ago. Knockout over Arthur Lopez on the Contender Series, and then more knockouts following that. But very light competition: 4-15, 2-1, 2-1. Get the shot in the UFC, knocks him out against a 6-1, and then big step Justin Tafa 7-4. I still think Derek Lewis is a much bigger step than Justin Tafa, and I think if Derek Lewis fought the other Tafa brother 10 times, I think they probably split that, or maybe Derek wins it 6 times or 7 times. So all in all, I think Derek on a skill-wise and a power-wise is going to be able to win this fight, and he probably is better than Taliesin Teixeira. The wild card is the fact that there's another 15-year age gap in the main event, just like there is in the co-main, and that's a hard thing to predict. Taliesin is 6'7", 83-inch reach. Derek Lewis is going to have a 4-inch reach disadvantage. Tapology, 65% on Teixeira. They are almost certain that this is going to be a knockout. Yeah, give me Derek, man. It's more fun to root for the 40-year-old. I think the 25-year-old with limited experience and his main UFC win is a guy who we consider to be gatekeeper, maybe low-end gatekeeper in Justin Tafa, as fun as his fights sometimes are. Yeah, I'm going Derek Lewis to finish this card right. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. Tough one, but I'm with you. He's a plus 185 dog, by the way, so make a little money. That responsibly.
Oh, yeah.
Wrap it up.
All right, here we go. All right. Why don't you kick us off with our pick rundown?
Prelim notables, starting all the way back with Kennedy Nizichukwu over Walter Walker, Chris Curtis over Max Griffin, and Jake Matthews over Chidi and Njokuani. And then I'm also going to take Eduardo Mora over Lauren Murphy. Lauren Murphy, famously called the diner waitress by Andrew Schultz. Horrible, horrible, horrible thing to say, but somehow found herself in a title fight years ago, and now she's like 42. Then I'm going with Morgan Charrier over Nate Landwehr, Junior Tafa over Tuco Tacos. What a fun name to say. Steve Garcia over Calvin Cater, Vitor Petrino over Austin Lane, Gabriel Bonfim to beat Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and Derek Lewis to beat Taliesin Teixeira. What do you got, Tom?
I think, did we agree on everything today? Kenny Nizichukwu over Walter Walker, Chris Curtis over Max Griffin, and I'll tail you on Mora over Murphy. I'm going Jair over Landwehr. I'm going Tafa over Tacos. Garcia over Qatar. Cater. Petrino over Austin Lane. Bonfim over Thompson. And Lewis over Teixeira.
Cool. Yeah, my phone just randomly started playing the song "Borderline" by Madonna. I don't know why, but
What could that mean?
I don't know. It's actually not a bad song. Like if you're in the gym or something like that, it's not a bad workout song. It is on my playlist. I'm not gonna hide and say that I don't have a Madonna song on my playlist, but why it just started playing, I don't know.
Hey, people love Madonna. She was
Yeah.
big for a period of time.
Well, what people do for Madonna is like, comment, and subscribe. So please
There
like,
you go.
subscribe if you like our content as well as follow us on Instagram @_Pickin Fights. I just had a stroke as well. You don't want me to have a stroke anymore. Follow me on X and Instagram, Spotify, and @Pickin Keith, @Pickin Fights Tom on X. Follow us there as well. What else am I forgetting, Tom? Anything?
I don't know, but if you are having a stroke, we should call 911.
No, I'm not having a stroke.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Swatted.
I don't know if you can hear it, but my dogs are going crazy because there's an ice cream man outside. The ice cream guy is the new postman. So
Makes sense.